it was really extraordinary to be in the capital of the United States, not being persecuted, welcomed by an elite university, welcomed by the Kennedy Center itself.
To me,
right?
the Satoshi is one of the only things on planet Earth that are actually sacred.
The biggest frustration for me in this discussion is that it's not a dialogue a lot of the time. It's a debate, and it's not a debate fought on rational merit. It's a debate on who is the most insulting of the other person. We worship the lead developers. We worshiped, these people who had protected, preserved, advanced Bitcoin for some time. And so we wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt, right? It wasn't don't trust, verify. It is the most valuable property in the world. It's a new form of property. It's not well understood. For the rest of your life, Bitcoin will be under attack. And as is your state, as is anything that's valuable. Right.
We really have to avoid the Disney remake of Bitcoin. That would be the worst outcome ever.
Why do Albertans want to secede from the state of Canada, from the nation of Canada? Well, they're being stolen from, right? I wish I could live 200 years just to see the outcome of what's going to be with Bitcoin and sovereignty and city-states and culture.
Tomer, my friend, welcome back to the Bitcoin Infinity Show. Nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me back. I'm thrilled to be back. The highlight of my life is getting to come on your show, Virginia.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Nice to spend a couple of hours with you, though. That's what I mean.
Always a pleasure to talk to you. It was a long time now since we last saw each other. I think Madeira was the last one, right?
That's the last time we saw each other in person and maybe did this podcast. I do think you and I spent New Year's Eve at the billionaire's house.
At one of our friends' house in Miami. Right. That was good fun. Yeah.
But we haven't seen each other since New Year's, and it's now practically white paper day.
Yeah. Almost a year has passed, but not quite. What have you been up to since?
Well, most recently, in the fall, at the end of September, beginning of October, I was involved in the BTC in DC conference, which I'm eager to tell you a few details about without spending too much time. And then just last week, there was the Canadian Bitcoin conference in Montreal that I attended as well. Both were good Bitcoin-only conferences.
Yeah, I saw some stuff from the DC thing. I hear Larry Lepard was
Larry was
the basest boomer ever, doing his base boomer thing.
Yeah, he was also at the Canadian Bitcoin conference, and at the Canadian one, the event was quite far from the hotel. It was like a 30 to 40 minute walk, and I had the privilege of walking back with him and Cedric Youngelman, and we had a really good long talk. Larry is a real treasure in the Bitcoin community. He calls him as he sees him. He's a wise old man, and I mean that in the kindest and most flattering way. And he's very thoughtful. He's got a lot of experience to bring. So he's definitely worth listening to for as long as he continues to be a contributor. But switching to the BTC and DC conference, that was a really interesting event. It was put on by the George Washington University, which is like a top 10 university in the United States and a private university. And the fact that they had an interest in Bitcoin and Bitcoin only, rather than rejecting the whole idea as part of a scam or bringing all the scammers in for something novel, was really excellent. It was held at the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts, which I'm sure almost everyone everywhere in the world is familiar with. You've seen honorary events televised from there, where like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducts Led Zeppelin, and so it was really extraordinary to be in the capital of the United States, not being persecuted, welcomed by an elite university, welcomed by the Kennedy Center itself. There was something about it, people dressed up, Bitcoiners dressed up. I know a couple of people who were there who said that they bought a suit to attend the event. And I commented that it was the first time in 7 years that I tucked my shirt in. So I had an opportunity to have a conversation with one of the administrators at the university because I'm talking with them about something more formal for Bitcoin. And the point that came up to me during the conversation, which I made, is, Bitcoin is built off of the most advanced mathematical theories, the most rational economic know-how that we have. It utilizes the most advanced microprocessing manufacturing technology and the most efficient energy markets. It stands to change a lot about how we think about our time preference, economics, philosophy, so many different things. So coming into a university for the first time where knowledge has perhaps been, exclusive of Bitcoin, not embracing of Bitcoin, one can be even more critical of a lot of the stuff that's gone on at universities, is a homecoming. It's a coming home of great ideas into institutions that are meant to develop, protect, espouse, teach great ideas. So to me, the Bitcoin arrival at Washington, D.C., at the George Washington University, was like the prodigal son returning and hopefully being welcomed. And I'm seeing very positive results in the conversations that I'm having there. So it was unique, right? It was a milestone, albeit a quiet one. Bitcoiners dressed up, not because they wanted to bow down to the establishment, but to present themselves as, credible to the establishment. And to your comment, Larry Lepard didn't exactly mince his words. He said something to the effect of the government is filled with fucking evil fuckers. I can't remember the exact quote, but that was the sentiment and verbiage of it. And it received applause, but sitting next to him was a U.S. senator when he said present company excluded. It was well received. So this metamorphosis of Bitcoin to a mature, widely known, widely understood, respected asset took a step forward there. I don't want to say it's there yet. I think we still have a long way to go, but it was nice. And I understand that they're planning on doing it again next year. Same place, same supporters. Great speakers came to it as well, from all walks, but lots of the most prominent Bitcoiners, especially the ones who do the North American circuit, were there.
Yeah, Larry is not afraid of calling a spade and calling theft. So
right.
That's always. Right. And I find it. I bet there was a lot of suit coiners there. Like the latest saying is, you either die a Bitcoiner or live long enough to see yourself become a suit coiner.
Yeah, it's. I actually think there were more suit coiners at the Canadian Bitcoin conference, because they gave a lot of stage time there to the idea of treasury companies. And I think the treasury companies had to put on a suit because their valuations have been diminished a fair bit, so that they don't really have much else to stand on. But the BTC and DC conference, because it was put on by the university, had a lot of intellectual topics. So like Giacomo was there, and he was talking about Bitcoin education. And Bitstein was there from the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute, and he was talking about the importance of preserving knowledge and know-how, and talking about his communications with the university. So there was an intellectual air about it that, maybe I think Giacomo wore a suit jacket, but a t-shirt underneath, and I can't remember exactly what Michael wore, but it was like it wasn't Bitcoin in corporations. It was Bitcoin in the mind, Bitcoin in the government, Bitcoin. It wasn't that there was no discussion of it, or no presence of suit coiners, but we didn't have a bunch of people pitching. We didn't see a bunch of people pitching treasury companies on crazy ideas. That wasn't present at all, actually.
That's great to hear, because if there's one phrase I've been that I miss hearing from all of these conferences, like the last couple of years, it's the phrase "not your keys, not your coins." Nobody says that anymore, but it's still just as true as it always was.
Yeah,
and we're missing the bigger underlying truth here, that like Bitcoin is not like other assets. It's not something that corporations really can own, is it? Like we can
delegate the ownership to a committee, and a committee is a composition of individuals.
Yeah. Let me pick your brain on this one. Like this is one of my pet peeve rabbit holes here. Like the way I look at it and the way I try to explain it to suit coiners and the likes of them. Like in Lugano, you meet a lot of bankers and similar. It is that like you cannot really own a Bitcoin, or you cannot possess it. Like ownership is a legal relationship between you and a thing. But Bitcoin isn't really a thing. And if you believe in ANCAP principles, then there's no such thing as owning information because you don't have intellectual property. Is not a thing. Like we all know that if I have information, I don't lose anything by you having the same information as me.
Unless it's your private key.
Exactly. I'm coming to that. Yeah. Possession is when I actually physically control something. So if I steal your car, you still own it, but I possess it if I stole it. So, but Bitcoin is, to me, it's a layer deeper because it's just information, but it's asymmetric information, meaning like that I can act as if I owned it because I find it improbable that someone else has access to the same private key as I do. So it's just a secret I keep from others. I also find it improbable or implausible that the network will change to such an extent that it will render my Satoshi useless because the 21 million cap is changed, or some other technical change that will lead to unforeseen consequences. So like that's the only reasons that I can act as if I own the Satoshi. Yeah. So the thing that is valuable is not the Satoshi itself; it's the ability to move the Satoshi, and the Satoshi itself is not really ownable. Would you agree with this, or do you have another view?
I will not agree because it would be a boring podcast if I agree.
Exactly. Please debunk me.
Yeah. Well, what I'm going to come down to is a bit of an epistemological point, which is working with concept and their definition. So none of what you said technically is incorrect, and some of the words are significant understatements, like improbable. Profoundly astronomically improbable are the right adjectives to qualify improbable with in the case of cryptography and Bitcoin. But when we use a concept like ownership, historically the concept would have referred to a combination of possession and legal enforcement, right? Like in a situation where really there's no state, it's like two kids playing with a ball, and the one who has it is the owner of it, the one who possesses it. But if there's a dispute, you expect they're either going to fight it over, and one's going to walk home with the ball and say it's his at this point, or the parents are going to come in and say, no, you have to respect the property rights. So it's not a legal thing per se, but there's authority and enforcement. So the ability to enforce your possession of something is something that we would have called ownership. In Bitcoin, there is. This is, I think, where it's important that we don't get lost in the technicalities. You do own a Bitcoin, right? The manner in which you own Bitcoin is not physical enforcement, because it's not a physical good. You enforce your ownership by knowing something that you don't disclose to others, right? So the secrecy is ownership of an idea. If we broaden the concept of ownership to having control, possession, like exclusive control and possession of something. So you need to keep your private key secret to keep your Bitcoin. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that sentence, though the word using your implying it belongs to you. You're the owner of it, right? And that's
what I mean by you can act as if you know it, and sufficiently improbable.
Right, and so it's sufficiently. Yeah. So if we're going to language, I don't think you need to make qualifications, right? Well, when you say not your keys, not your coins, they are your coins, they are your keys. The manner in which you keep them is by having a secret that you don't disclose to anyone that you generated with entropy, which allows you to enforce your exclusive control of of what ends up happening, if anything ends up happening to those things. It's actually a more powerful form of ownership because you may own a ball, but I can come with a screwdriver and damage it. And now you own a damaged ball. So your ownership of it was still constrained by my ability to damage it. I can't physically damage your Bitcoin unless I roll back the chain, and I need so much power to do that. It's much more than a screwdriver. It's more power. If your blocks are 1,000, if your coins are 1,000 blocks old, like I need more power than the human race is capable of generating, like to try to overcome the race and unreceive your coins if I was the one who sent them to you. So it's it's a more powerful form of ownership than has ever existed. And it is more powerful because it's more than just you holding something in the physical realm with your hands or putting a box around it. It's encased by a cumulative proof of work, a cumulative expenditure of energy. So it's the most powerful form of ownership we've ever seen. It's unusual, and it's one of a kind. So it adds to the definition of ownership, at the concept. We don't need a new concept, I don't think. I think it is the concept of ownership, but it's maintained and exercised in a different manner.
Yeah, I would agree to that. It's close enough to the old definitions of ownership to actually call it ownership, because you can act as if you own. And this is also why I find it so overwhelmingly retarded to claim that you can own other data in Bitcoin, like owning a dick pic JPEG on or whatever token that is supposedly attached to Satoshi is akin to owning a star in the Andromeda galaxy. I mean, you can claim that you own it, but you have the same ability to change it or move it as anyone else on Earth.
Once it's inscribed on the Bitcoin blockchain, you can't move it, you can't modify it on the
everyone
chain.
else can see it.
And everyone else can see it, and everyone else can copy it, and everyone else can modify and move their copies of it. So your ownership doesn't give you any control over this thing that everybody else in the universe doesn't already have as well. And so, that is a destruction of the concept of ownership. Like if you say, I own something, but I can't do anything with it that some complete stranger can do with it as well. Now you destroyed the concept of ownership, because ownership really does come down to this definitional thing of it. Ownership of a thing means you have exclusive control over it and its use. And if it's if it's public information on a public data store, then it's not yours. There's no concept of ownership. And even Casey, who the creator of Inscription, says, well, only if we pretend, i.e. lie, detach ourselves from reality, pretend only if not in reality do we think that we own this thing because we're following a trace of a chain of signatures, then we can say we own it. But if there's a beautiful image and I want to display it on the wall behind me that's inscribed on the Bitcoin blockchain, there's no way its alleged owner can prevent me from doing that. If I want to modify it, there's no way he can prevent me from doing that. If I want to make copies and sell them, there's no way he can prevent me from doing that unless he invokes the copyright law. But he's not relying on the fact that it's on the blockchain. Then he's relying on copyright law, and the blockchain has no relevance to it whatsoever. So this concept of ownership, it's an important point that you're making here, right? Like what is secret is in a sense owned, because only I can control it and have it. And cryptography gives us this remarkable capability of not disclosing the secret, but proving that we know the secret, right? Like I can prove I have a private key by signing something and sharing the public key. And that is, that's what allows this new concept of ownership to exist. And it was historically only used to prove identity and authenticity. But now in Bitcoin, because we have this property on the chain, which is the Bitcoins, we suddenly have ownership of information, so long as we understand how to retain our ownership of it.
Yeah, I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here, because I want to end up at a point, which is that we have to get there in mysterious ways. Because just before this pod, we decided that the core versus not debate is getting a bit tiresome, and that the like deeper meta debate is really more interesting. Especially from a philosophical perspective. And I absolutely love talking to you, especially you, about these things, because I think we have such similar mindsets here, and I'd like to find where we differ in our definitions and such. So this what we've been talking about up to this point reminds me of two things. One is Gigi's "The Map is not the Territory" article, if you remember that, where he explains why Bitcoin is the first time that the map actually defines the territory.
Yes.
So we define what reality is by the map we draw of it. That is what the time chain is, sort of. And it also reminds me of this chapter from Everything Divided by 21 Million, Alchemy, which is about element zero. An idea I stole from Jörg Hammerstorff, which is a very bright guy. And the basic concept there is that the information about the asset is the asset. This is what makes Bitcoin so unique. So I think it all has to do with the sacredness of the Satoshi. This is what makes the Satoshi so insanely special, because there's nothing like it, and there never will be. They cannot be by definition, because uniqueness is it's in its very core. Pun intended. So
and I love hearing you use the word sacred.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
I use it unironically. To me, the Satoshi is one of the only things on planet Earth that are actually sacred to me. I can't find a better word for it.
Right.
And
I think these words all have down-to-earth meanings.
They do.
Even if they're just in the sense of an ideal that is never realized. But I think Bitcoin realizes certain ideals that we have had for forever in the real world. Right? It makes the ideal property real, the ideal scarcity real. Like we've had things that are scarce, but not fixed in supply. Well, now we have something that's scarce and fixed in supply, so it's knowably scarce.
Yeah, and also divisible.
Definition, right? It takes you to a nearly Platonic form of scarcity, right? Like that there is this perfect, and we're seeing things from the Platonic realm, from Plato's cave, as they really are, which we didn't think could exist. So we get into a lot of really philosophical, intellectual, epistemological stuff.
Hey there, everyone. Just wanted to remind you that if you want any of my books or the book I wrote together with Luke, Bitcoin, the Inverse of Clown World, you can go to bitcoininfinity.com and you'll find it all there. They're also available on Amazon. And this week, in honor of Black Friday, which should really be called Orange Friday, we are dropping all of our prices for the foreseeable future to 15 euros per paperback book and 21 euros for hardcovers. You can also listen to us talk about the books on our other show, the Bitcoin Infinity Academy. Right now, we're doing Bitcoin Independence Reimagined. Lots of fun. So go to bitcoininfinity.com, buy some books, and brush your teeth. Our favorite hardware wallet, Bitbox, has a Black Friday week sale. So go to bitbox.swiss to get the following discounts. 21% off the Bitbox O2, the old version. 10% off the Bitbox O2 Nova, the newest one with the latest security chip, the one you can plug into your iPhone and all of that. 21% off the backup bundle, which includes a steel wallet, 3 backup cards, and 5 tamper-evident bags. And 10% off everything else. Go to bitbox.swiss right now, brush your teeth, order a hardware wallet. Have you heard about BitVault, a new Bitcoin security solution, a wallet that uses the functionality of multisig and time locks, so that even if the attacker thinks he got a hold of your stack, he really didn't. This beautiful little app is 100% open source. It's in beta at the moment, but you can secure access for a whole year for only $119. This offer ends on November 28th, so make sure you secure your Bitcoin security right now by signing up for a year. Go to bitvault.sv to find out more. And brush your teeth. I want to get to the question at the end of this. So, like, I'm going to go on another tangent too, since you mentioned the word sacred. I also feel blessed to have this conversation with you, to have spent the last couple of days in Lugano doing amazing things with amazing people. Like, I can't find a better word for it. I truly feel blessed, and I truly view the Satoshi as sacred.
Right.
And this is coming from a very skeptical mind. But where I was getting at with the meta debate is like, I had to think about it myself. Like, what hill is worth dying on here, and for what reason? And I think the people have got their priorities a bit wrong here, because I think the meta debate is the first of all, everyone should be happy that this is happening in Bitcoin, that there is a controversy, and that people are not agreeing, and that people are reacting and acting and doing stuff to protect Bitcoin, regardless of what side you are on in the debate. Like, everyone should be happy that something is going on, and that people are taking this seriously. The other one is exactly what we were talking about there's no ability to actually own an NFT, and it's all bullshit. I think that hill for me is I love dying on that hill, like just explaining to people why shitcoins are shit.
Yeah.
If we do that, if we can rid the world of gullible morons that fall for these scammers projects, then we won, because there will be no more ordinals, because there's no one to sell them to anymore. So that's like the most important battle in my mind. And then there's the decentralization of mining. And in my mind, like, DATUM from OCEAN is like the real groundbreaking innovation, and that's more important than knots.
Right.
Even.
Right.
I think that decentralizing mining again is, and now of course we're probably a bit behind here, because now they're proposing soft forks and stuff. But let's not go into that. But more the meta debate. Like, in your mind, what's the most important hill to die on here, and anywhere really in debates about Bitcoin?
These are all good things to fight for. But let's start with this discussion around. You said people should be happy that there's a dispute in Bitcoin, and happy is maybe not exactly the right. We're going to nitpick on words a lot. I think you and I. People, should welcome.
We have nothing else to do.
Yeah, well, why are people unhappy? Like, people don't like to see other people in disagreement, partly because they're afraid it will lead to some bad outcome, like violence between the two people arguing, or a breakdown of a system, that they were hoping was already done and baked and, uncontroversial. So I can understand why some people are unhappy about it. But then when you take the context of where we are, like, Bitcoin is only 16 years old. It's not widely accepted by everyone in the world as money. It has a lot of discovery to do, which also then bleeds into the other two discussions that we want to have. But if we try to remain focused on the fact that we need to embrace and go through the process of controversy, right? We shouldn't evade controversy. We shouldn't turn our eyes away and say, oh, there's a controversy about data storage on Bitcoin, or the governance of core, or how the developers ought to behave. Let's pretend it doesn't exist, or let's cover it up, because that might disincline new people from coming into Bitcoin. It's like, no, if we avert our eyes from it, if we evade the confrontation of it, then if it's a problem, it festers, right? And it can metastasize into something bigger. And if it metastasizes into something bigger, when Bitcoin is bigger, it presents a bigger risk. So let's get through our controversies, our disagreements, however we get through them, sooner rather than later. Let's confront them. Let's not be shy about calling what we see as wrong or stupid or short-term thinking by those terms. And then let's reason about it. So the biggest frustration for me in this discussion is that it's not a dialogue a lot of the time. It's a debate, and it's not a debate fought on rational merits. It's a debate on who is the most insulting of the other person, who can score, what are the points that they call in political debates? I forget what they're called, but who can get a jab in here and there, rather than how do we work towards what the realistic outcome is. A lot of insincere points, a lot of, attempting to score points, rather than make rational and valid points is part of the debate. But I think I welcome that too, because I think it then ultimately demonstrates that the people who make one-liner posts and think that that's a victory, or who claim that another side is stupid when in fact the other side has a lot of merit and intelligence behind its point, are ultimately going to be shown to be wrong. And then they have to confront the ego issue here, which is, I was wrong. Am I going to admit that I was wrong, or am I was wrong and I'm going to dig my heels in and pretend that I was right and, and play another card towards this losing hand of being metaphysically wrong. So I think we've got this incredible chemistry going on right now. And by that, I don't mean everyone's getting along. I mean, people are challenged every day to say, was I right? Was I wrong? Like everybody knows, or, everybody should know that you and I both have been leaning on the Knut's side in terms of the decision of what node to run for, maybe possibly for different reasons. But where was I going with this? Look, for me, everything I'm doing, I'm trying to have a rationale behind that I can explain, that's not an emotional, irrational point. And I'm trying to get at something. And for the people who've taken numerous victory laps prematurely on the other side, telling me, when are you going to admit that you were wrong about this, that, the other, when some new piece of news comes up and they think that it's the end of the discussion because it was mildly incorrect or embarrassing, but not core to the fundamental discussion, is something that I try not to rub in people's faces. But I hope that they're self-aware enough to say, if you leaped to a conclusion that said that this was over, that could be done, that this debate is over, you were mistaken, and you should do a postmortem on what your mistake was. Or maybe you knew you were mistaken in the first place, but you were trying to score a point by saying the argument is over, I'm walking away, I'm done from it. Like, I win, you lose, right? Like, you don't really win in reality just by saying I win, you lose, and walking away. Sometimes if you have won, there's no point in having the debate with someone who's lost. But there's a debate going on here, and there's actions being taken by network participants that demonstrate provably that there's a debate that's still going on here. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, it's fantastic. I mean, you said a profound thing to me in Madeira, I remember, and that is like the block size wars. We were all happy about that. We won the block size wars, but you pointed out that we won the battle, but the war is still ongoing. Like it's proof that Bitcoin could be resilient once, but it's not proof that it will be forever. Like, and it was resilient because people did care and because people did the necessary things to protect the network from being taken over by bad actors. But it's by no means a proof that it will do that forever.
Right.
Arguably, it goes more resilient the more people that are connected to it, but only if those people are actually doing their homework and caring enough about the thing. And that's not just running your own node. That's all the other stuff as well. Like I genuinely believe that us having chats like this and talking about these things and being present on Twitter and stuff has a huge influence on how people act. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not just economic nodes to me. But taking the humble pill if you're wrong about something is super important. I can say that I was probably like a little too happy about Taproot too quickly, and I think we should have been more careful and not. It was sort of a group psychology thing. Like everyone wanted SegWit, and we got SegWit, and we won the block size wars.
Yes.
And then everyone was like, everyone wants Taproot. It's done now. Let's fucking go. And we just did the thing, right? And maybe we should have thought it through a bit more. Like, was it worth it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think these things are super, super complicated because in hindsight, you can't objectively know if a change was good or bad. Like, not even the SegWit with the witness discount.
If SegWit didn't happen, it probably wouldn't have been the end of the world. If the 2 times that hard fork happened, that would have been bad because that would have been corporate control. But we could have just fought for nothing, for no changes, and had the same outcome. Yeah. And today's controversy around core versus knots would not be the same controversy,
No,
because there wouldn't be the Taproot annex in which to put these.
and as much as I like that the Lightning Network exists and the people are working on it, it wouldn't have been that bad if it took another decade. Like, would that really be a catastrophe?
I think we would have had a slightly more vulnerable. We would have still had the Lightning Network, but we would have had to have different mechanisms which were more cumbersome to protect us from the malleability bug, which is too technical to get into. But I think one of the things we find is if we give more time, we can find workarounds that aren't easy, but are still thorough. And making changes to make things easy also opens up attack surface. There's the big lesson from SegWit and Taproot. Yeah. And indeed, like, SegWit was so driven by the enthusiasm and demand for the Lightning Network because it sounded like such a great solution. I don't think anyone realized how long it would take to build and what all the hurdles along the way were. But when Taproot came, we weren't really sure what the supposed benefits would be, right? Like, it was very technical benefit claims. There wasn't like a white paper around, here's the amazing thing you can build with Taproot. With SegWit, it was like, we want SegWit so we can build the Lightning Network. And here's the white paper on the Lightning Network. And
fixed malleability.
We didn't have that with Taproot. And so it got activated because we worshipped, I'm going to use another word that I think you might have. We worshipped the lead developers. We worshipped, these people who had protected, preserved, advanced Bitcoin for some time. And so we wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt rather than don't trust, we trusted them, right? It wasn't don't trust, verify everything left, right, and center. It was a lot of, okay, these guys know what they're talking about. They're benevolent. Let's let them have, the next thing. We're bound to benefit from it, even though we're not exactly sure what the benefits are, right? So I think now those chickens have come home to roost. It turned out people aren't really doing much with the alleged benefit, but there was an exploit available you can look at it in whatever way you want. But now we've got these inscriptions, which have been a problem. Maybe it was taken care of by the fact that there's a block size limit and those things got expensive and the free market demonstrated that they weren't very valuable. So maybe no big deal. But we've got this acquiescence issue of like Bitcoin can be used however it can be used, and we shouldn't try to prevent it from being used however, which is at the core, I have to use that word ironically, at the core of the debate between core and knots, right? Do we want to restrict its uses from everything that it can do to the more strictly monetary uses? Sorry if these are long answers.
No, but I agree with every point, and this is where this changing of definitions debate comes in, because they have been, like, slowly but surely changing some of the definitions of words, like what op return is for and such, right?
Right.
In the documentation around it.
When you change when you're in charge of the dictionary and you change the definitions of words as a metaphor here, you're trying to police the use of words, and here where it's the opposite of policing, and it's more, well, you're not policing, what was expected to be policed. Right?
The meme is like you have a broken rib, but we fixed it in Photoshop. It's very reminiscent of the definition of vaccine being changed in Oxford Dictionary for the COVID vaccine to be legit. Like, right.
This has come up like 3 or 4 times in our conversation already, which is around ownership, around the proper use of Bitcoin, around what a bug is. Like, we find ourselves constantly, especially in Bitcoin, and I think because it's a new concept that's complicated and unprecedented and does many things that nothing before it has done, struggling to understand it and struggling to define it. Like, all the words we use, the coins aren't coins, right? They're not physical minted things. They're aphysical, ideological, duplicated entries, right? Like, everything in the digital realm, we try to give it terms that come from the realm which we come from, which is the meat space realm.
Mhm.
And always those metaphor, and so it's a metaphor, and always the metaphor is broken in some sense. It's broken at the physical digital translation layer, but that breaks other things about the metaphysics of the concept. So, when we talk about digital something, it's always different from the physical thing that we use the same thing term for. A digital coin does not behave the way a physical coin behaves. And Gigi's article, Bitcoin is Time, really talks about this first ever unification of the notion of a token and ledger as being one and the same. So for people who haven't read Bitcoin is Time, this is the best article there is on Bitcoin, coming from this writer at least, and speaking to another writer. It's just like that. There's a penny that drops when you read that for the first time.
And the other one I recommended, though, where the map is not the territory. This is not a pipe or whatever that goes. But profound work. So do you think the long and complicated question maybe, but do you think, or not so long, but slightly, it's a lot of nuance. A lot of these developer types and the people working in core allegedly are like more of this San Francisco liberal type, like more left-wingy, and thus some people say that automatically means more nihilistic and less principled. Mm-hmm. And that's if you're more like open to that you're somehow more open to changing definitions of things if you are like inclined to do that politically. Do you think this is a real thing, or is that just like scaremongering?
Well, it makes me think, because at the Canadian Bitcoin conference, I had a long talk, very civilized, but it was a debate, it was a disagreement, it was a argument, whatever you want to call it, but it was very civilized with someone on the other side. And these conceptual conflicts kept coming up, and it left me thinking, and I'm very loath to generalize like a whole group of people. Yeah. Anyone who's in favor of the op return being blown out must be a nihilistic Marxist communist, right? I'm very careful about this. And I haven't had a chance to meet many of them face to face. But one of the things that I found in this rather lengthy conversation is that there is, when I say philosophical, there's a philosophical disagreement around the idea that things are built with a purpose. And
yes.
So like Bitcoin was built with this purpose to be money. And the debate that came from the other side, I'm trying to do it complete justice, was Bitcoin is a set of rules. And the set of rules allow you to put inscriptions into the taproot thing. Someone came up with a way to do this. And so you have to accept that that's the way that it is, right? Like there's nothing you can do about it. And to me, it's like, well, if there was a bug that made 42 million coins or something, we would call that a bug. We would say that's against the purpose of Bitcoin. And so we would fix the bug. And in fact, if you say a thing is what it does, which I've heard, a thing's purpose is whatever it does, which I've heard others in that camp say, I think that is an attempt to destroy the concept of purpose. Because if you say whatever a thing is, whatever a thing does, that's its purpose, then you can't ever say, well, this thing that you built is not fit for purpose. I hired you to build a house and you dug a hole in the ground. It's like, well, that it's a hole in the ground. Its purpose is to be a hole in the ground, not to be a house for you. It's like, well, I know I wanted shelter to cover me and protect me from the rain. And you're just saying that whatever the thing is its purpose. So it's not true. Like we as human beings are purposeful beings. We can set our mind to a purpose and build something that attempts to fulfill that purpose, to meet that need. And if it fails to do it, we haven't built it according to purpose. If it's close to it, we can maybe tweak it and fix it so that it better fits the purpose. If it fit the purpose, we can then look at it and say, what other purpose might it fit? But we can't say that nothing has any designated purpose that comes from our expectations of it, our contemplation of it. And so I think that that's a flaw that I can't say I've heard everyone on the opposite side repeated, but it seems to be a flaw in conceptualization of what Bitcoin is that often gets invoked. And I think part of the word game, the concept game that we're playing to an even greater extent is like, you have some people that say, oh, I hate spam, but I can't define it. Some people say, there's no such thing as spam, right? There's, it is what it is what it is, or there is spam and you can't stop it. And so we just end up with a multi-pronged set of invalid arguments, right? Like if you can't, and I think this is really important, if you can't define every single instance of a thing because there are edge cases, it doesn't mean the thing doesn't exist. Like for example, chairs exist, right? We know what chairs are, but I can make an edge case of something that can be both a chair and a table. It's this man-made flat surface that's low, but expands, and you can choose to sit on it, but you can also place something on it. So it's an edge case definition of a chair. But you can't then bring that and say, so is this a chair or isn't it? I don't know. I guess chairs don't exist, which is the edge case of some of these. If I do something that's a Lightning Network anchor inscription and it's used as a justice transaction for this and that, is that spam? It's like, well, it may or may not be, but the JPEG is a spam, right? Like don't try to look at the edge case and deny the existence of the undisputable case, of which there's millions, and then pretend that they don't exist. So and this to me is where what I was talking about before, it's like rational argumentation requires rational conduct, not these gotcha escape hatches. I said I don't know what spam is, so we can't argue whether something is spam or isn't, because I just keep playing dumb, right? Like when you're
moving the goalposts, right?
Yeah, maybe that's moving the goalposts. Maybe it's called playing dumb. Maybe they're one and the same sort of thing. But ultimately, you have to move forward. If you can't engage in rational dialogue with somebody and you make a valid point and they don't acknowledge it, not because it's wrong, but because they don't want it to be right, you're dealing with someone who's evading the truth, and so you're not in an honest debate. And this is where the term bad actor kind of arises and has one of its two meanings, which is if you're not an honest debater, you're not really there to help resolve the issue in the best interest of Bitcoin. You're there to win an argument. You may have ulterior motives. And I think a lot of the questioning of what's going on here is the questioning of, like, if there's no good explanation for the change that we're confronting, maybe there's a bad explanation, but there sure as heck isn't a good one.
No, I met a lot of people on the core side in Prague at the Trezor event. In Europe, there's a lot of technical Bitcoiners,
right.
And
makes sense.
That they have a point that their main point was sort of like that it's useless to run these filters and stuff because at the end of the day, these things are going to get relayed anyway. But the where I like philosophically disagree with them is like, yeah, but I don't really care. Like, I'm not gonna help facilitate this. And regardless of the success of my not helping facilitating this,
right,
I'm still not gonna help facilitate it, because if everyone, it's only true because everyone thinks that way, that it's pointless to resist. But it's true. You probably have to get to like 92% momentum in this for this to actually work. But the same is true for the new proposed defaults here. Like the 100K thing also has to get to at least 8 or 10% before it starts actually relaying this stuff. And yes, it's true that you could always bring a briefcase full of dollars to a miner and do that, which is why I think that DATUM and decentralized mining is more important than this debate, because right now you can bypass it. But still, I think it's sort of a philosophical difference there. Like I view my node as the thing I'm using for this stuff, and what I do with it is none of your business. I don't have to agree.
Well, just as a point of order, we're finding ourselves dipping into the core versus not specific debate, which we wanted to avoid. So for me, the last point I'll make about this, and I'll try to make it really quick, is like my disappointment in the whole debate is it should have gotten much more quickly to a framing of, for years we have relied on policy, which was effective because, as it turns out, it was a gentleman's agreement, right? Like people didn't route it, miners didn't mine it, and everyone abided by the policy, except for special one-offs, but there were such a minority of the issues that it didn't happen. And then that broke. It broke because there was an exploit that policy didn't cover in the inscriptions. And two, then Libre Relay and other things and Mara's slipstream were breaking that agreement to enforce policy. They were like, look, we can violate policy. So the conversation should have been, now that policy is no longer enforceable, which elements of policy do we want enforced and how do we enforce them? Presumably through consensus rules, because we can no longer rely on gentlemanly behavior to enforce policy. And we didn't have that conversation. A bunch of people defaulted to, well, it doesn't work, so those are no longer rules, which is dangerous because there are policy rules that are absolutely essential to the continued functioning of Bitcoin. And, and there are ones that are undesirable by many Bitcoiners. So we haven't been having the right debate for whatever reason. Then there's maybe some lessons to be learned there. But that's my last on the Bitcoin core versus knots, I hope, for this podcast.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. I think it's that debate is not being had. Like, Bitcoin is money. Like the literal first row of the title of the white paper is
electronic cash system.
Yes. So if it's not functioning as that, but as arbitrary data storage or whatever, then obviously something is wrong. And sure, I could agree to that. Maybe we're doing this the wrong way and something needs to change. But like the definition, like the very purpose of the thing has not changed. Like you cannot fix the broken rib with an X-ray. Like then you have to do something else. Like, and I agree. I missed that from the debate.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, and again, you end up with people saying, you're citing the white paper. Do you remember that the Bcashers cited the white paper, this, that, the other? It's like the distinction here is really important. Like the Bcashers weren't saying that Bitcoin itself wasn't cash. It was that people weren't using it as cash and we intended a second layer, not that Bitcoin, we didn't have the pro-SegWit camp saying Bitcoin isn't cash and we shouldn't try to use it as money, right? Like that. So again, we end up with these very flawed arguments being used to defend, keep the status quo or comply with tolerance, acceptance, defeatism over non-monetary use cases of Bitcoin being permitted. So, but there's a spectrum. I mean, there are the people who say, look, technically you can't stop it. There's always some other way to get it in there. And so you might as well not resist it. And that again is an argument that can really be had. But let's move away from it because people have heard this to death. And we want to talk about, at the very least, this is healthy for Bitcoin, right? Like this is, unless we disagree, this is important that Bitcoin go through this. It's important that it go through the growing pains. It's important that the users of Bitcoin have to fight for what they view Bitcoin to be. And it's important that when there is legitimate debate, that it be had and that it end up being resolved without the destruction of Bitcoin. And I think that's one of the things that's really valuable. And for people who find this really uncomfortable to the point where they don't know whether they should own Bitcoin because it makes them so uneasy, there's really only two recommendations I would have. One is close your eyes and ignore the debate, or two is sell your Bitcoin. Like, because this is going to be a recurring theme in Bitcoin. Like we didn't win the war or we won a battle. The war to protect Bitcoin, just think what we're saying Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is money. It's potentially going to become all the money in the world or the most dominant form of money in the world. You think people aren't going to fight over that? You think tricksters and hucksters aren't going to try to separate you from your Bitcoin through any means necessary, any means possible, including undermining the protocol itself, the development, writing fake wallets? There's many, many attacks to come It is the most valuable property in the world. It's a new form of property. It's not well understood. For the rest of your life, Bitcoin will be under attack. And as is your state, as is anything that's valuable, right? I think this was kind of the point that was not explicitly made, but in the undertones of Jason Lowery's thesis of software. It's like people try to get things from other people, or in life tries to get things from other things in life, and the protection of it. So how we protect Bitcoin is a new frontier for us to fight on, and how we protect even Bitcoin's definition and purpose is a new frontier for us to fight on. But we have to fight on it, and probably always will, just like everything living has to always fight for its life. So yes, Bitcoin is alive.
I'd like to test out another metaphor that just popped into my head on you. So if the block size wars was like us winning the first Star Wars movie, and we blew up the Death Star, like the big blocker Death Star, right? And this debate is sort of the Return of the Jedi. The Death Star isn't ready built yet, like this. The scaffolding around half a Death Star, and we're about to win this battle too. But the real thing, but we should expect Disney remakes and crap, and we really have to. We really have to avoid the Disney remake of Bitcoin. That would be the worst outcome ever.
So that's your metaphor?
Yeah.
I actually used the Star Wars metaphor just yesterday, I think, on one of my Bitcoin philosophy spaces. To wrap up, it had something to do with using force, right? For good or for evil. Use the force. So there's something to the Star Wars. There's rebels and there's the empire, right? And I was talking about it in the context of Bitcoin is a rising empire. It exists in many places. It has a currency. That's all, essentially all it has. That's protected by force, right? The use of energy, the use of force is, So when I say use the force for good rather than for evil, that's what this will take us to the mining debate that you want to have, or the mining decentralization discussion. Decentralized mining is the light side of the force. Centralized mining is the dark side of the force. It's too much power for anyone to possess, and they can abuse it. So I think Star Wars provides a really interesting metaphor because we were talking about really the mythology of Bitcoin when this came up, and how the story of Bitcoin's creation, its origin story, everything that goes on to it is a big part of the value of Bitcoin, and that how we as human beings often rely on storytelling to get themes and important ideas across. And Star Wars is the success that it is because it told a really powerful story of the little guys fighting the big guys. Well, that is the Bitcoin story of of those who are oppressed by those with power and control can come back and win with hope, a new hope. There's a lot of common themes between.
Absolutely, and this goes. This goes so deep. That's also why the Matrix is a good metaphor, because it is a hero's journey story. Like this, the Campbell's hero's journey story is all over Star Wars and the Matrix and all of these things. And I used a Star Wars metaphor in one of the older books. I don't remember which one of them, but where the Death Star is the establishment and most people and taxes and inflation and all of that. It's literally the empire. Yeah. And the rebels are, the rebels. Us, we are the crypto anarchists and, whatever they call it, the ANCAPs. And Bitcoin is the photon torpedoes going into the thermal exhaust vent in the Death Star. Like that's what Bitcoin is. It's going to blow it the fuck up because now they can't do anything about us. So that's the analogy I had a couple of years ago. But,
I think you can certainly have fun with it. Bitcoins are the hackers. Luke Skywalker built these droids, and so he's a bit of a hacker as well. But it's this big idea, right? That the little guy can defeat the overwhelming established empire, especially when he's on the side of good. Like this belief that good is victorious over evil has really powerful roots, and it has rationality behind it, because the idea of evil is dependent on taking what is unearned from the good. Right? It's like, to use your labor, to use your productivity. It really just does come down to theft, taxation, all these kinds of, murder. These things are evil because they take away the free will and the product of the free will of individuals. So it's all good versus evil is always a battle of freedom versus slavery, or freedom versus some other antithesis of slavery at the end of the day. And evil always rises in environments of good, sometimes overtaking them because the good is benevolent, charitable giving and generous. And so when the evil sees the generosity of the good, it takes and takes and takes. And then it feels entitled and keeps on taking and taking beyond what the good can produce and generously give. And so we end up with moments where we're confronting evil that is taking so much that even the good can't keep up with it. I think that is a description of where the Western world finds itself today. Like, government has just grown so big, so out of control, and it's taking, and its commitments to give only in exchange for the granting it more power to take from others, that things are inverted and unsustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is another hero's journey story. The Shawshank Redemption is what I used for the last chapter I added to the praxeology book, and in that, like, the Shawshank Redemption is really a metaphor for hope. It's a very good Bitcoin metaphor in that too. Like, the low time preference of digging yourself up out of the prison with a teaspoon while everyone thinks you're doing something else is great. And also the Morgan Freeman's character tells the Andrew Dufresne, Tim Robbins' character, that hope is dangerous because you are going to die in here, and if you're hopeful, it's only going to lead to depression. And he says, look at this 90-year-old guy that got released, and 2 weeks later he kills himself because he's so institutionalized and used to the three meals per day and the rules of the prison and stuff. But the meta point of the whole movie is that hope is always a rational choice, because guess what? You're going to die anyway. So you might as well live as if there is hope. Yeah. Because it's only when we live as if there is no hope that there actually isn't any hope. Like, look at the Soviet Union, a giant prison, continent-sized prison for 70 years. Hope got them out of there. Yeah. Only when they started denying that these things are real that they stopped being real. So we can never
I think this is a really important point here, because part of what these repeated wars in Bitcoin are, these repeated battles, they're battles between those who have hope and are fighting for what they hope is true versus those who say you might as well have no hope. Right? Like, there's
because the protocol does this.
Corporations. So, you can't do anything about spam. You can't do anything about the government. You can't do anything. It's like Bitcoiners are. I'm going to try. So thanks for your defeatist advice. I'm still going to try because I have hope, because I can see a path to realizing what I hope for through Bitcoin. And I mean, it is amazing. You and I have been in Bitcoin for long enough to have seen it not just win these wars, but on a much more personal level, deliver many of the things that we hope for within our personal lives and our family lives. Right? Like, Bitcoin has given me the ability to stay at home and take care of my kids who have special needs. Bitcoin, which I always hoped to do, but was unrealistic under the fiat system. And now I have it, and now I can exercise it. And so my hopes have been realized. Bitcoin's and that's what I want to do with my freedom, which the state won't let me do, right? And the traditional system wouldn't let me do. So there's a real hero's journey constantly happening for lots of people, and there are climaxes that end up happening. And many people's hero's journey ends not because they died, but because they managed to achieve the goal that they had hoped to. So there's a lot of happy endings all over the Bitcoin story. I'm not saying it's only happy ending, but if you fight for what you believe in within Bitcoin, that's positive, that's a good outcome rather than an evil, treacherous, parasitic outcome, you can see that happen over and over and over again.
Absolutely. You said happy ending there. I got a picture in my head of a Thai massage for sats.
Like, that's your problem.
I heard someone someone's mentioned Swedish massage the other day. It's like, what the fuck is that? Oh, it must be a massage with a sad ending. That's the only thing.
Yeah, that's funny. That's good communist cheese.
If you want to find local Bitcoin communities, other Bitcoiners, Bitcoin merchants, and Bitcoin events in your area, there's no better way to do that than through the Orange Pill app. Wait a minute. It's not the Orange Pill app anymore. It's Club Orange. Club Orange is an Omni app that includes a lot of features, including a list of events, a wallet where you can send and receive sats over the Lightning Network. You can even geo-sap areas, so you can send sats to a whole bunch of people in one single area. You can also tap sap while you're chatting to someone, which is a new feature that I don't believe exists anywhere else. Overall, a fantastic app for connecting Bitcoiners all around the world. So go to cluborange.org and sign up today. You won't regret it. It's not just a gay dating app, it's everything else too. You can use it for... forget about that. Go and sign up. cluborange.org. If you want to really secure your Bitcoin, you should check out the Bitcoin Advisor. They have never lost a single sat, and they take care of your stack together with you. They can't use your stack. That's impossible. But they can help you with inheritance planning. They can help you hodl the Bitcoin long-term. So go to thebitcoinadvisor.com to find out more. And brush your teeth. No, but would it be right to say... first, Bitcoin must win the war within you before you can be a soldier for Bitcoin in the external world. I think there's something to that. And I
think they both happen simultaneously, though, right? It's not. I mean, I appreciate the point. Like, if you're going to fight, you have to believe in yourself, right? Yeah. Because if you're approaching this with a defeatist attitude, the only sense of continuity and effort you get is, there's other people saying we're all defeatist, and you're acting out of fear, defeatism, complacency and surrender. And so you're not fighting, you're acquiescing, right? And you're maybe standing in the way of those who are fighting. And so it feels like a fight because you're just standing there doing nothing. And other people are saying, get out of my way. And you're like, why bother? Just let them do what they're going to do. They're going to do it anyways. And so you feel like you're in a fight with people, but you're really, get the hell out of the way. Like, you're just being in the way. You're not fighting for something. You're standing against something. And if you really, assess, like, am I on the side of good or evil? That's really important. And if you find yourself in a position to say there's no such thing as good or evil, then you've missed out on something, right? Like my advice to you is really think hard about the fact that there actually is good and evil. If you check out and presume that these concepts don't exist, you're going to be lured into doing something that you think is neither good nor evil, but which is evil.
Yeah, and if you don't find that distinction to be, sexy enough, go read Economic Science and the Austrian Method by Hans Hermann Hoppe and read up on argumentation ethics. Because sure, science cannot derive an ought from an is, but can come pretty damn close to an ought not. If you're like deductively reasoning from first principles, you can.
Right. Well, listen, it's so overcomplicated. The people who say you can't derive an ought from an is. I is hungry. Right. I ought to eat food. Right.
Yeah, that is deriving an ought from an is.
It's anyone who say you can't, like, why ought you to eat food? Because you'll die otherwise. Well, why don't I want to die? Because the very definition of value comes down to...
At some point, you have to pick your axioms. Maybe that's a vulgar word to use in this context to some, but first principles can do a lot. Like the argumentation ethics, I absolutely love it. Like, if I argue with you, by the act of arguing, I show you that I think communication is a appropriate method for conflict resolution. And then if I start stealing anyway, it's not argumentation anymore, it's bullying. So it's literally the non-aggression principle. And I think this, like, I would love if this was in the backbone of every Bitcoiner, like everyone had this in them. But it seems like, since Bitcoin is for anyone,
it includes those who don't.
Yeah, exactly. So
I think that's when these wars happen in Bitcoin, it is this pulling back of the curtain. Like, we thought we were all Bitcoiners and that it all meant the same thing. But then we find out, no, different people actually in this group have different values, are prepared to take different risks, are prepared to stand up for different things, and and their philosophies are different, right? And even if they seem to agree on a lot of things that in the traditional world would view, they're all crypto anarchists. Well, crypto anarchist, are you a permissive crypto anarchist or a
paranoid
progressive crypto anarchist? Yeah, like look. Are you extremely paranoid crypto anarchist? What are you Are you paranoid about corruption? Are you paranoid about weakness? So there's a lot to fight over still, to argue about, right? And it doesn't always mean that there's one right side and one wrong side. I think that's also a false dichotomy. Yeah. Sometimes both sides are wrong. Sometimes there's nuance in both. Sometimes there's a meeting in the middle. Sometimes neither side is extreme enough in one direction, and that's why there's a dispute. So getting to a workable solution, sometimes there's many workable solutions, right? Like there's more than one way to skin a cat. And so you can do it in different ways.
I heard someone say that organizing Bitcoiners is like herding cats. I like that.
It is.
To tie this back to the movie analogies here and stuff, like, have you seen a South Park episode called The Death Camp of Tolerance?
I don't think so. I haven't seen. I love South Park, but I don't watch it regularly or religiously.
No, this is from one of the earlier seasons, and it's great.
So probably not, because I didn't get into it until at least the movie came out.
But this is after the movie, but still quite early, like one of the first 10 seasons. You have to tell me what the episode is about that. So it's about, in the episode, Mr. Garrison, the school teacher, figures out that someone has been given $1 million for because they were fired for being gay from a school. So he does everything in his power. The rest of the episode, he does everything in his power to get fired for being gay.
Okay.
Which means he starts doing more and more outrageous gay things with his partner, Mr. Slave, in the classroom, including inserting small animals in various orifices of this Mr. Slave. And the more he tries, the more courageous everyone else seems to think he is, because everyone just applauds him, and he gets awards and stuff. And at the same time, there's a side plot about the Nazi camp where everyone is supposed to be or forced to be tolerant, which is hilarious in itself. But I think this is. There's a Bitcoin metaphor in here somewhere. I think that the morale of the story is like, just because I tolerate something does not have to mean that I approve of it.
Right.
Like, I can tolerate stuff, but I don't have to approve. Bitcoin is like that all the time. There's the consensus rules, which means I tolerate. I can still use my node and use my filter settings or whatnot to show to the world, maybe in vain, but I don't care that I don't approve. Like, I can tolerate, but I don't have to approve. And I think that's the nuance that people are missing.
I mean, we have lived with this. I mean, there are things that are unacceptable, and we pass laws to say if you do these unacceptable things, then where the state is going to come after you. That's been the history. The state's overstepped its boundaries, but that's the concept behind the law. Then there are things that are unpopular, right? And we tolerate those. And so we draw a line, and we ourselves don't do those things. Popular is like they're not for me, right? But I don't think people should go to jail for doing them, right? Like I don't think people should go to
happy
jail.
Endings.
Yeah, I don't like. So we don't have laws on these things, but many of us frown upon them. Yeah. And it's okay to frown upon the things that you don't like, and to say to somebody, hey, like you just you burped in the movie theater, you spilled popcorn all over the movie theater. You made a mess of the place. That's not offensive. We need to get the state apparatus involved in, but to call somebody out and say, think about what you're doing, maybe you ought not to be doing it, is completely legitimate, right? They can't say, well, so sue. Someone might say, so sue me, right? If it's against the law. But that is, and that's always in a free society going to be a large area where people dispute without violence, unapproved of activities, but not illegal activities, right? And so that's a difference between like what we consider valuable and moral. And we just have to accept that that's always going to be the case. And to your point, which keeps dragging us back into the Knox thing, but it's like, I don't think anyone should go to jail for putting a normal inscription on there, a monkey JPEG, but I don't like it. And I'm happy to tell them that I don't like it and that I think they're doing something stupid with their own time and energy that isn't benefiting them. And that's also causing some harm to other people. And so that they ought not to do it. They ought to use Bitcoin exclusively as money. And some people will simply do the opposite out of mischievousness. And I think we're always going to have to tolerate that, because like the good has to tolerate some amount of not good. I don't want to describe these things as evil because people will put them in the same camp as theft.
Stamps are evil.
I mean, so those are intentionally mischievous things to exploit the goodwill of Bitcoin, right? Like to do something not aligned with the interest of Bitcoin that is permissible because Bitcoin has to ultimately tolerate these things, right? And so, but the behavior, the conduct of it is not good, right? It's intentionally malicious, and it's malicious to other network participants, but it's not able to be forbidden. Or maybe it can be eventually, but that's the way it is. And so you're always going to have these people who are thorns in the side of any system. And this is indeed where, someone saying, well, you might as well let them do anything because they can still do this, is like, that's taking tolerance too far. You do want to stop people from doing the things that you can stop them from that are wrong to do. If you can stop them, we don't want perfection to be the enemy of the good. If you say, well, we can't stop all crime, so we might as well not have police and laws, that is a very defeatist and obviously invalid argument. And so, but I don't want to talk anymore about spam and any more metaphors in that regard. So I'm done.
Well, good. What do you want to talk about, Tomer? Like you were talking about
mining. You wanted to talk about mining decentralization.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing, because it's like the next big attack in Bitcoin, or I don't know what the next big attack, but a future big attack in Bitcoin is going to come from, there's 3 or 4 parties that can mine that have more than 51% of the hash power between them, and they want to do something, or they don't want something to be done, and they have unilateral control over that. And that's going to bring us to a debate about this. So we can try to, if we can permanently prevent that situation from arising by decentralizing mining, that's a war we avert. We avert it through a distribution of power so that no one can abuse that particular power. And the decentralization of mining is very important. There's arguments that are made as to how best to decentralize it, but certainly the most relevant present matter is ocean mining and datum, which is part of the previous controversy we don't want to discuss anymore. But it is it's this notion that you can actually have a pool where participants are each forming their own block templates according to rules that they decide upon. And so they're not all in cahoots with one another, and there isn't someone on top of them telling them what to do. And so they're free and sovereign. And this is a big deal. And whether or not that all ends up happening exclusively with an ocean pool, because ocean pool really isn't a pool in the same way that the others are, thanks to datum, or others use datum, that's all going to be good. So I think the pushing forward of datum for mining decentralization is really important. And I'd like to see other significant pools adopt it. Or something
absolutely, and alternatives to ocean and datum would be nice. Like because right now, like if you're mining with another pool, an FPPS pool, you're basically not a miner but a hash monger.
Right.
That's what you are. You sell your hash power, but you don't know what block you're mining, so you can't really call yourself a miner in that case. Also important to point out that you can mine a 100 kilobyte op return with core using datum. It doesn't stop you from doing any of that. And there's another actual say, for instance, if all the bigger pools, more centralized pools, refused to mine these 100 kilobyte op returns. Now we're getting back to this again. Sorry, I know we shouldn't talk about it, but this is in a different context. Then there's actually a bigger risk that one of these smaller miners that is making its old block template is the one that is going to actually put the thing on chain. So that's the irony of that. But that aside, I agree with you. Like the thing I'd really like to see is competitors to Ocean, like other pools with similar models, because it's not good if they are the only one and the only alternative. That's never good. I'd like to see others. I've heard I think it was at that Abu Dhabi conference where someone mentioned that they were doing something similar, or maybe it was in Slovenia at this minor conference.
You go to too many conferences.
Yeah,
someone in Madeira was going to be launching a Stratum V2 pool, but it's now more than a year and a half later, and it hasn't launched. And I think, this again is perfect being the enemy of the good. The Stratum V2 is a long-term project that hasn't delivered a working pool yet, even though there's pools that say they're going to use it, whereas Datum and Ocean developed Datum quickly, and it is working. It may not be perfect again, but they haven't let perfect become the enemy of the good, and what they're doing is good, and they're growing. There's a long road ahead of them. They're still under 2% of the whole network hash rate, so we got a long way to go. But I'd love to see my actual miners mining, right? Not miners just hashing someone else's template, but being able to take the sovereignty over, spread it to 30, 40, 50% in the next few years. I don't think that's inconceivable, but it requires education, lobbying, and explanation to the people who control a lot of the hash power. And I think historically, certainly what we saw in the block size wars was that miners back then, they were just trying to make a very short-term buck, literally dollar, as quick as they could. So if it came a little bit, the hash rate got distributed between Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin precisely according to where the highest nominal or marginal cent in dollar terms was going to be earned. And quite often, it would even be the case that fees were ignored, or the 100 block wait time was ignored because, Bitcoin Cash might be crashing, but if it was worth 1/100th of Bitcoin, then miners ended up putting 1/100th of the hash rate to Bitcoin Cash as they did to Bitcoin, because it was just like revenue neutral or profit neutral. It was entirely without principle, right? It was entirely, the only principle was make a buck. And I think mining is such a hard business long term. The difficulty adjusts every couple of weeks to take away any advantage that you had over the network. The halving cuts your rewards in half.
But the difficulty adjustment works both ways. This is why I think anything about tail emissions or crap is fun.
Overwhelming. It's not half the time it works in your favor and half the time it doesn't. It's almost all the time it works against you, because other miners, because if you're profitable, then you and other miners have the incentive to mine more. And if if there's someone selling mining equipment to the market, it's like either you buy it or they buy it. And if they buy it, they're going to increase the difficulty and get more of the market share, which is a fixed reward. It's not like the market is growing. The amount of Bitcoin being issued is fixed at every block. And so I think that's what makes it a uniquely, nearly perfectly competitive market. And it uses game theory, right? The best way to win the mining game is for miners not to add hash power and nobody else to add hash power to the network, right? Then, it'd be super simple to make tons and tons of money. But of course, people are tempted by the opportunity to earn more money. And so they continue to add hash rate as long as it seems profitable. And oftentimes they overshoot because many of them are adding hash rate at the same time, which makes the business, when you zoom out at it a long time, there's been lots of bankruptcies in mining. There's been lots of periods of losses. It hasn't been a great investment. And now many of them are making the industrial miners are making this shift to being also data centers for AI computation. because the pure play thing. So I think pure play mining is getting harder and harder to be profitable at, and it'll end up being infused or part of power generation facilities, or at least managed for power generation
or heat
services. Yeah, like so, trying to extract the heat, trying to do it. So there's all sorts of different strategies that develop. Whether you're trying to get cheap energy that's stranded, or whether you're trying to get benefits from the secondary effects of using the energy to mine, such as heat. All these strategies are not about pure mining, and that's where the differentiation ultimately comes in. And I think principled mining may well end up being like we could see a blow up of long-term financial support for publicly traded mining companies. That doesn't mean mining is going to go away, but it may mean that many people mine at home and actually do it to protect their freedom, to secure their coins and secure their ability to have their transactions included in blocks, because they'll be mining in a pool where people generally prefer to be permissive of the proper use cases and not permissive of spammy use cases that prevent financial transactions from making it into the blockchain too expensively. There's a whole unstructured future ahead of us here that we just haven't confronted yet, because the challenges haven't come, right? The attack hasn't come to say, well, I'm a miner with 50% of the network or a substantial amount, and some governments are paying me to fill the blockchain, to either mine empty blocks or fill it with stuff that isn't ordinary users' transactions. And so people are restricted from using Bitcoin. How do we overcome that? And there can be all kinds of solutions, but mining centralization is a problem, and mining philosophy could be a problem. Like if we have very decentralized miners, but they all act the same because their philosophy is just take whatever I can rather than take what's good for the network, and there's someone putting a lot of stuff that's bad for the network out there into the mempools, then we've got the same sort of problem on our hand. But I'm sure we're going to confront all of these battles, and they'll all be stressful and straining, and we'll have to figure out how to resolve them.
I think, though, that directionally they will have to be more philosophically aligned, because they will over time realize that the Satoshi is more valuable than a dollar. That a quick buck is not as desirable as the Satoshis themselves.
Right. That will be crossing the Rubicon when miners want to hold on to Bitcoin because energy providers to them accept Bitcoin as payment for their energy, and then energy producers are accepting and holding Bitcoin. We will be in a new world then, and hopefully an easier world. I guess it'll have all sorts of new challenges that we haven't discussed yet. But we will have won an important war, which is the acceptance of Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, especially for energy, which is kind of the base, the commodity in our Western industrialized world.
Yeah, and I love the fact that in the future we're going to have figure out parallel use cases to mining, and heating is the most obvious one. I'm just waiting I'm going to give them a shout out, of course. I'm waiting for my Often 2 from 21 Energy, which is a Bitcoin miner and a house heater. And it's really good to have it down here in Spain because the houses aren't insulated. So like January, February in Spain is really shit cold inside.
Right.
So it's very good to have one of those. And it's going to be super fun to install it and start mining.
And it's just a room. It's a room heater, like a space heater. Okay.
Yeah, it's indoor room heater, exactly. So instead of gas or electricity, well, it is electricity, but it will not only heat up the room, but mine Bitcoin as well. And why not?
Yeah.
Another funny aside is that the fact that hash rate is constantly going up because Bitcoin is awesome. It also means that the 10-minute interval is in reality wrong. It's more than it's more like nine and a half minutes.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
Right,
but it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but the faster blocks end up paying. If you're a miner, you think you're getting blocks faster, but you're ending up paying for them in higher difficulty.
Yeah. So it all levels out in the end.
Bitcoin's constantly working against you. You're like, I'm helping you, Bitcoin. And it's like, well,
Yeah. Well,
I'm
hold
helping
on.
you too, but you need to lower your time preference.
Bitcoin's reply is yes, I'm going to help you too, but only if you can be patient for a decade.
We're the same thing. Lower your time preference, and I'll pay you too.
Yeah,
well, maybe another little pivot is you turned me on to Hans Hermann Hoppe, and I've
did. You've been reading Hoppe. Excellent. Yeah,
I've been reading some of his stuff, and one of the topics that comes up a lot, and I was talking that I was at the Canadian Bitcoin conference, is this topic of secession, states or provinces seceding from a federally established government. And he talks about it, as like cities being able to secede from European states. And
I think he says 10,000 Liechtensteins somewhere. Like that's what we would want. Yeah.
Yeah. And he says, this is the correct action for when the federation, when the larger, higher level of government oversteps its boundaries and becomes illegitimate. And he's very big on using the term illegitimate. When the government becomes evil, that's my term, it becomes illegitimate, and it becomes right to take the power away from it. And when you actually have like a two-party system where both parties are corrupted, and so your only choice is to vote for one or the other, secession is the legitimate action to remove the illegitimate government. And in Canada, we have 10 provinces and 3 territories, and 2 of the provinces are talking about secession. And one of the challenges that you have when you have a fiat currency issued by the federal establishment is all of your money is made up and controlled by the federal government. So if Alberta or Quebec tries to secede from Canada, what does their money become? They become the El Salvadors of the nation once known as Canada. And so they need to have reserves of money that will be accepted elsewhere, that can't be overinflated at their expense. And I think Bitcoin is this incredible candidate for restoring the justice of legitimacy of government, or the option to exit illegitimate oversight that hasn't existed before. And so that, I don't want to expect these things to happen quickly, but I think the view of Bitcoin as being this Austrian libertarian empowering tool, not just for savings, but for enforcing government legitimacy or exiting illegitimate government, hasn't really been something that's been talked about. But when there's conversations at Bitcoin conferences around this thing, I really encourage people to read his essays on illegitimacy and secession, and to consider how Bitcoin may be a valuable instrument in a province, a city, a state, establishing for themselves. So, people talk about strategic Bitcoin reserves. For what purpose, right? Well, ironically, for the purpose of a local government seceding from a tyrannical, overarching government.
Yeah.
It could be the reason. So when states and cities start forming these reserves, it makes a lot more sense to me than when federal governments start accumulating these reserves, because I don't know what a federal government that's issuing a fiat currency is going to do, but a local government that doesn't issue a fiat currency and is subordinate to the fiat currency legal tender laws of the federal government, it does create options and value.
Absolutely. I mean, I visited the state of Alberta this summer.
Province.
The province.
Words,
yeah,
right.
no, the province of Alberta. I would say the state of Alberta, in order to do so, I had to accept some interference from the bigger mafia that wanted me to use their cockbuck money and put up a border and some signs saying Canada all over the place. But I was never in Canada. I was in Alberta, and I used Bitcoin with the real Albertans that already use Bitcoin. Bitcoin already fixes this. And there was a lot of state agents from the Canada thing roaming around, but I was never with those people. I was with the true Albertans, and they all used Bitcoins, and they lived in Alberta, and I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, well, I mean, this is which will maybe be a shorter conversation, but it is it is remarkable how Bitcoin reaches the individual and then it reaches these organizations. And I think, I can't remember if it was before we started recording, but when we talk about companies trying to hold Bitcoin, well, Bitcoin's meant to be held by the individual, but it's not ridiculous to think that Bitcoin could be held by a dependent state, right? A state that's part of a federation that's seeking independence through secession and needs to secede. Like, why do Albertans want to secede from the state of Canada, from the federation, from the nation of Canada? Well, they're being stolen from, right? They're actually in Canada, something called transfer payment, which is the government looks at how much income everybody has, what the average income is in different provinces, and says, well, yours is too high because it's higher than these other people. So we're going to increase your taxes and send the money over there. So they're being stolen from by the power of fiat usury. And if they just tried to secede with the fiat dollars that they have, the government would simply print more and not distribute them in Alberta. And even though Alberta seceded, it would essentially become poorer from its financial resources. So it needs to divest itself of the Canadian dollar and into something else. But how can it really divest itself of the Canadian dollar without Bitcoin? Like, what are people going to use as money during the years that it takes to divest itself of the Canadian dollar? There's nothing else. So, like, the importance of and the need for low time preference around the adoption of Bitcoin for citizens to have future choices for themselves and their posterity it can't be overstated enough, right? Like, it's really, really important, because if you're subordinate to a money printer, then you are a slave of the money printer and you can't escape the money printer. And this is the sly roundabout way that gets you freedom from, even though it may take many, many years.
Absolutely. It's the Bitcoin fixes Bitcoin fixes this thesis playing out in real life. And yeah, I absolutely agree. Like, smaller and smaller units, ultimately the responsible individual holds the Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And that's the way it should be. Like, we're taking back the driver's seats of our lives here on multiple levels. But I think this is an underappreciated level, like secession, the secession narrative.
It's not taken seriously by federal governments. Like, they think, oh, we'll bring in the troops, we'll pass a law, we'll print them into oblivion.
No. But if you look at a place like Madeira, for instance, like, I mean, we were there, like, how long ago was that? Like almost 2 years
last
now?
Spring, yeah. So a year and a half.
Yeah, a year and a half. And that place is already kind of independent because it's on an island and it's far off. So the bigger Portuguese government can't do too much to them. But what they can do, though, and what the EU can do, is manipulate the euro and control them that way. But Madeira now has like almost 200 retailers accepting Bitcoin and a thriving Bitcoiner community. And what can they do about it? Nothing. They are regaining independence through just having this thing around.
Yeah. And Madeira's such a small economy that it won't be fought over, right? But Alberta and Quebec or Texas, right? Yeah. They're going to have a harder time if they want to declare independence than Madeira might. Right? Madeira's geographic.
It's more likely that it's on a city level than on a province level, I guess.
Yeah. So I mean, I wish I could live 200 years just to see the outcome of what's going to be with Bitcoin and sovereignty and city states and culture, because like one of the things that we're seeing, and this again is an underappreciated cost of fiat money, it's not just that people are stolen from, it's the culture becomes vastly diluted, because you may have whatever legislature you want in Spain. If you use the euro, it's that European Central Bank that controls the debasement and so many other things. And the only country we've seen secede from the European Union is the one that never surrendered its currency to the euro, which was the UK, right? But
there are other countries that didn't surrender the currency, though.
Right, so they may be able to secede much more easily than the countries.
Yeah, so some of them are they have different ties to the euros, like the Swedish krona, the Czech krona, the Bulgarian lev are all detached from the euros to the different degrees. Now
Right.
Bulgaria is switching over, though, which would have been a great opportunity for them to switch to real money instead. But there's a lot of boomers.
Momentum of history doesn't shift quickly.
No.
History is a slow thing that you study over decades and centuries, right? Not months and weeks. So, as historic as I think Bitcoin is, I think it's important to recognize that its historic impact is going to be felt over centuries. It's really cool. It's really interesting to be involved in it now and to be able to voice, to have your voice heard and to form an opinion that it matters what your opinion is and on the adoption of it as money and its direction. But it's like, its really big impact is going to be to liberate humanity from broken money and broken government, right? It's a historic political economic phenomenon of unprecedented proportion. And so it's the humanity developed industrialized civilization, but suffered from centralization at this point. And the only real thing that's actually going to matter in decentralizing industrialized humanity is Bitcoin. I know that's a bold statement, and I probably need to write a book or two about it rather than spend the last 5 minutes or 10 minutes of a podcast on it. But I rationally believe that it's more than just hope. It's more than just platitudes. It's like, this is going to take over the money, and the money is it's the one really bad thing about government. Like, if government didn't have the ability to print money, it wouldn't actually be as bad as it is. No,
they would be much more. They would be held accountable to a much larger degree. Like, it's the illusion, but it's also what people want. They want more. They want the free lunch. The urge to have the free lunch is like the source of all evil in that sense. Yeah, because it is the source of all money.
Yeah. And it's a failure to recognize that there ain't no such thing as a free lunch, right?
No, exactly.
You're paying for it with your freedom. You're paying for it with the civilization's culture. You're paying for it with your ability to create a long-term plan for yourself. And, you're paying for it in all sorts of different ways.
And we've been through this before, Tomer, nor is there such a thing as a second breakfast. You can only break your fast once. There is no second breakfast. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not technical enough to understand.
No. And there's no such thing as a damn brunch, because that's gay and retarded. Like, it's a breakfast, for fuck's sake.
It's a slightly late breakfast with luncheon foods.
No. Fasting is good for you. Eggs and bacon are good for you. Like, it's a breakfast. Anyway. I mean, if you want more from Tomer, you should check out the legendary treasure of Satoshi Nakamoto. It's a beautiful piece of Bitcoin film art and a beautiful piece of writing, I'd say. One of my favorite pieces. And also the Bitcoin Philosophy Sundays, right? That's the name of your spaces.
Yeah, that's what I do on Twitter on Sunday mornings at 8:30 Eastern time, depending on what your time zone is. Definitely a good time for Europeans to join in, because it's early afternoon for them.
Yeah, it's great fun. I join every now and then. I think I've even been invited to host it at one point, but unfortunately I couldn't do it that time around.
Well, I have plenty of vacation, so like to have you fill in as the guest host would be
anytime, man. I love it.
Next month. I've got a vacation in November. So,
and anywhere else on the internet where you want to send our listeners, or anything you want to promote, or
I think if you're going to read some of my stuff, there's some really interesting articles that are finding a second life. They're on my Medium, so tomerstrolight.medium.com. There's one that people are really enjoying a lot lately. I've had a lot of requests to read it. It's called "Hello, I Am Bitcoin."
That one.
Yeah, it's like Bitcoin speaking to. I wrote in the first person view of Bitcoin. So if you want to listen to Bitcoin, that's a good one. And another one that's been finding a little bit more life and enthusiasm is called "Why People Wonder If Bitcoin is Alien Technology," where I talk about how different Bitcoin's technology is from everything else on Earth. And so there's like 4 or 5 unique things that Bitcoin does that nothing else on Earth does. And so it makes people wonder, like, well, maybe Satoshi was an alien.
No, I've read them both, and I love them. They're great pieces of work. So go go check out Tomer's stuff. And nice to have you on again.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been too long.
Yeah, it has. Live long and prosper. And to everyone else, this has been the Bitcoin Infinity Show. Go like, subscribe, and brush your teeth and all of that. And arrivederci. See you next time.
Cheers.
Thanks, Tomer.
Bye-bye.